Subcommittee will come to order. Thank you for the witnesses for being here with us today. We are going to take a close look at the Veterans Disability Benefit Program known as a Total Disability Rating based on Individual Unemployment, or TDIU. We will examine whether the disability benefit properly compensates our veterans today. TDIU is a tax-free monthly benefit that VA awards to veterans who are unable to work due to their service-connected disabilities. Eligible veterans can potentially receive both TDIU and VA occupational rehabilitation benefits. TDIU is established in the 1930s, and the requirements to be eligible for TDIU essentially have not changed since 1940s. That's over 80 years. TDIU is meant to make veterans whole for their total loss of income resulting from their service-related disabilities. We must ensure that TDIU is properly and adequately supporting the men and women who have earned it and their families. Under current law, VA takes into account a veteran's education and work history to decide whether a veteran is eligible for TDIU. But the benefit itself is flat rate of roughly $3,800, regardless of a veteran's education or work history and or career growth potential. Further, a veteran may be eligible for TDIU if they are only able to maintain marginal employment. VA states that marginal employment is employment that pays below the poverty according to the U.S. Census, which is roughly $15,000. Even when a veteran's income is higher than the poverty level, VA will still consider their job marginal employment if it is employment in a protected environment, which can include a family business and or sheltered workshop. For decades, VA has refused to define exactly what employment in a protected environment means. Recently, the U.S. Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims attempted to define it as a lower income position that is shielded in some respect from competition in the employment market. But we know it's still unclear to the veterans about what counts as employment in a protected environment. We also heard from civilian workforce experts that the current flat rate of TDIU is outdated. However, these occupational experts emphasize that VA must conduct further studies and obtain data to ensure that Congress is fully informed if we are to change the TDIU eligibility criteria and rates to properly make veterans whole. Similarly, the Federal Advisory Committee on Disability Compensation recommended that VA study the use of age to determine vocational assessments in TDIU. VA conducted the study, but the VA has not shared the study results with Congress, despite our frequent asks from the committee's staff. In 2023, nearly 300,000 veterans receiving TDIU. We must ensure that TDIU benefits works for today's veterans and their families. That includes ensuring that we have all the data and information we need to determine whether TDIU eligibility criteria and benefits amounts should be modernized. With that, I yield to the ranking member.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we examine the TDIU program today, I think it's important to remember that behind all the numbers we'll hear discussed today are real live people, veterans who have served and sacrificed and have been markedly changed as a result of that service, both physically and mentally. Those veterans deserve not only our gratitude, but our attention and respect. Those veterans also deserve our understanding, our understanding that they are indeed individuals and that their abilities and disabilities are unique to them in many ways. So while it's known that VA disability rating schedule is rather rigid, the VA math used to combine multiple disability ratings isn't straightforward arithmetic. The total disability based on individual unemployability benefit is an attempt to inject some nuance and understanding into the system. Two veterans may experience the same disability differently, or a unique combination of disabilities may render one veteran unable to work, while others may still be able to find gainful employment. Therefore, TDIU exists to accommodate the unique circumstances of an individual veteran when their disability or combination of disabilities may not add up to 100%, and yet they are unable to find sustainably gainful employment. It's a benefit that must remain available both for current and future veterans. No program is without room for improvement. TDIU is no exception to that. However, we must tread carefully in discussing any changes to this program. Certainly, we should create pathways to work for veterans, TDIU or not, who may want to enter the workforce. However, we must not make receipt of one benefit contingent upon use of another. And we must recognize that cessation of a benefit could represent a significant financial hardship to a veteran. So, Mr. Chairman, thank you for holding this hearing. I look forward to the testimony of our witnesses and discussing ways we can improve benefits for our veterans. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Pappas. Our lead witness from VA is Mr. Ron Burke. Good to see you again, sir. Deputy Undersecretary of the Office of Policy and Oversight in the Veterans Benefit Administration. Mr. Burke is joined by Mr. Nick Pamperin, Executive Director of the Veteran Readiness and Employment Service, and Mr. David Barnes. Behrens, Chief Counsel of the Benefit Law Group, Office of General Counsel. Please, gentlemen, will you please rise? Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you are about to provide is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Please be seated. Thank you, and let the record reflect that the witnesses have answered in the affirmative. Thank you all for being here today. Mr. Burke, you are now recognized for 5 minutes, sir, to deliver your opening statement.
Thank you. Chairman Luttrell, Ranking Member Pappas, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for inviting us here today to discuss the Department of Veterans Affairs Individual Unemployability Benefit. With me today are Nick Pamperin, the Executive Director of Veteran Readiness and Employment Service in the Veterans Benefits Administration, and Dave Behrens, Chief Counsel, VA Office of General Counsel. The IU benefit fills a critical gap when the VA schedule for rating disabilities does not fully address the impact of service-connected disability in a veteran's circumstances. The intent of the VASR-D is to fairly compensate veterans for their disabilities according to the average impairment to their earning capacity. However, the VASR-D cannot always adequately compensate an individual veteran in their specific circumstance. IU is therefore an important benefit that enables VA to address these situations. For example, in cases where there is sufficient evidence that a veteran is unable to obtain or maintain gainful employment, but their specific impairment does not meet the disability rating criteria for a scheduler 100% evaluation, VA may be able to bridge the gap by utilizing the IU benefit to compensate the veteran at the 100% evaluation rate. In fiscal year 2023, VA provided IU benefits to over 377,000 beneficiaries and saw an increase of such benefits of 21.7% over the past 10 years. The IU benefit has a long history and regulation. In 1925, the VASR-D provided the first definition of total disability. In the following decades, the regulation regarding IU have been updated numerous times to clarify eligibility requirements. Over the last several years, VA has taken steps to review and scrutinize the IU program through various studies, court decisions, and reports. Recent court decisions have identified that VA's regulatory definitions of marginal employment and protected environment lack specificity. However, in January 2024, the Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims issued a decision which concluded that VA's definition of employment in a protected environment means a lower income position that, due to the veteran's service-connected disability or disabilities, is shielded in some respect from competition in the employment market. As a result of this decision, VA is currently drafting guidance for claims processors and is also considering whether regulatory updates may be needed. Aside from our response to court decisions, VA is also taking action to make sure that veterans are properly compensated for their disabilities by examining and revamping the VASR-D. On February 15th, 2022, VA published a proposed rule in the Federal Register to amend the portion of the VASR-D for evaluation of mental disorders. If finalized, the proposed change would help alleviate current disparities with the evaluation of mental disabilities so that veterans with such challenges may receive adequate compensation using VASR-D criteria rather than receiving individual unemployability. While IU is a great benefit aimed at compensating those who cannot maintain gainful employment, it is important to note that VA is also committed to other routes for veterans to find gainful employment. One of these routes is VA's Veteran Readiness and Employment Program. The mission of the VRNE program is to assist qualified service members and veterans with service-connected disabilities prepare for, obtain, and maintain suitable employment or maintain a life of independence. One of VRNE's services is the Chapter 31 program, and during the past 5 years, VA received nearly 3,000 applications for VRNE benefits for veterans in receipt of IU, of which 98% were found entitled to Chapter 31 benefits. VRNE service has seen an average of 549 IU applicants per year for Chapter 31 benefits. And since 2020, VA has witnessed the successful rehabilitation of 70 veterans in receipt of IU. Although the VRNE program has been successful in preparing many veterans for suitable employment, VA acknowledges that there may be inevitably some veterans who are unable to obtain or maintain gainful employment or whose specific impairment does not meet the disability rating criteria for a scheduler 100% evaluation. As such, VA remains committed to providing the IU benefit to fill that critical gap. Mr. Chairman, this concludes my statement. My colleagues and I are prepared to respond to any questions you or other members of the committee may have.
The written statement of Mr. Burke will be entered into the hearing record. We'll now move to questioning. I recognize myself for 5 minutes. Give me just a second. I'm going to go ahead and engage with that one question since while it's fresh. So in 2024, January 2024, you said the board came out with a finding on what the pay gap requirements, I believe is how we said. And can you elaborate on that for me? Because it seems like the catch point for TDIU or IU is that the poverty line is set at a certain spot, but if we're looking at this nationally, we fall in different areas of the country, it's going to be different for different people. What was can you get into the granular level in the 5 minutes that I have of the findings of that court, the details, excuse me?
Yes, sir. So I think the court finding that I referenced really talked about protected environments, and that really helped to call out not necessarily the question that you're referring to. I think there are multiple layers of what we're trying to address in the IU space. The largest is the VASR-D changes that would actually more adequately compensate folks with mental disorders compared to the current rating schedule. And in doing so, that may alleviate the need for individual unemployability, as we feel there are gaps in the way the VASR-D is written today.
And the protected environment, can you explain the range for me?
Yeah, so the protected environment, actually, this was a court case in 2024 where the court held that employment in a protected environment is unambiguous and means that a lower income position that due to the veteran service-connected disability or disabilities is shielded in some respect from competition in the employment market. And what we see with those largely are those, I think the sheltered programs. The court case didn't have anything to do necessarily with the levels of compensation. It really honed in on the definition of protected environment.
Because I think clarity is kind of the problem that the veterans are running into, exactly what protected environment looks like.
Yeah, I think with respect to the protected environment, there were a few things that came from the court case. Determining employment in a protected environment is fact-specific. The court listed as common characteristics of protected environment that employment sheltered from the open labor market.
Is the term protected environment, because it doesn't seem like it gets into details of what exactly a protected environment is, and I think that the veterans are kind of navigating themselves in and around it, and some have kind of got it on the chin, and then some haven't.
Well, and sir, to your point, I think not just veterans, but even our claims processors, which is why we're in the process of developing guidance for our claims processors, providing those tighter definitions.
Okay, so great point, sir. Because from what I understand, we've been trying to get that clarified since 2016, correct?
Well, we're actually taking the results of the court case from 2024, which actually gave a little bit of room for us to navigate within. And we're actually using that recent court finding to draw down and be more specific with the guidance and the clarification. Again, not just for claims processors, but to communicate that through our stakeholders, our VSOs, our veteran communities. So there will be a better understanding.
Projected window of when all of those individuals will be in their comfort zone?
I don't, but I'm certainly happy to report that back to this committee as soon as we have a timeline. We're working on that now. And in part of that, it's not just the guidance and clarification to employees, it's also assessing whether or not we need to change any regulations as part of that. So that assessment is ongoing right now.
Okay, because I'm familiar with multiple studies that the Congress has requested, and from what I understand, the VA has them internal, and we're still waiting on the results to be presented to us. But if the court findings are something that we can build the foundation off of, I would hate to kick that proverbial can down the road if we can prep everybody accordingly and then move forward and get this problem set out of our way. But thank you. With that, sir, I yield to the ranking member.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Burke, CBO has proposed tying TDIU eligibility to age. Is that something that VA would support?
That is not No, sir. We don't tie age to any other factor within our disability compensation program, and certainly don't believe it to be prudent with individual unemployability either.
Well, thanks very much. I share your concerns there, and I hope that proposal won't ever see the light of day. You did talk about, I was going to ask about the VASR D issue, and you mentioned that it's in the process of being changed and finalized. When would we expect to see that move forward?
Well, we're in the process right now, sir, of incorporating more than 800 comments. It takes a little bit. We do believe that in fiscal year 25, probably early mid-25, that will be finalized.
Okay. Thank you. The Advisory Committee on Disability Compensation asked VA to share with it information from a study that was completed in 2017 related to compensation levels. VA has so far refused to share that material, stating that it's dated and moot. But setting aside that fact, I'm not sure VA should be editorializing what information is relevant to the Advisory Committee. And so I'm wondering what harm VA sees in sharing that information, and if you'll commit to providing this information to the Advisory Committee along with results of your economic loss study.
Yes, sir. So I will tell you with respect to the ACDC portion, there are really two factors. Number one, that the premise of our internal review was based on the request to assess and consider age as a factor, which of course we don't support. So that premise, that predicated the internal study to begin with. Second of all, the findings, the data, all of that went along with that internal review is significantly outdated. And so with that, we continue to take the position that's an internal deliberative document, and that our way to approach kind of the updating of the IU benefit is really through the VASR D changes that I articulated earlier, and that is an ongoing process that we just spoke about.
So is there current data that could be married with this data that you say is outdated and provided to the committee?
Yeah, I'm not sure that current data would support the ACDC, only because again it was predicated on the premise was to review age as a factor, which again is not something that we support.
Okay, in terms of VR&E, you discussed a little bit about some of the issues surrounding that. There's a statutory limitation. I'm just wondering if you can respond if there's a statutory limitation or any other limitation that prevents a veteran with entitlement to TDIU from applying and, if found entitled, participating in services from VR&E.
There are no limitations. There are no limitations to any veteran receiving unemployability and then, again, trying to pursue the benefits associated with those that VR&E. And it's not just VR&E. I would add that we have programs from our transition space, our personal career planning space in our transition phase. We have education benefits and the like. But to answer your question, there is no limitation, sir.
And what kind of outreach does Comp Service and VR&E do to let them know about opportunities?
So we do outreach by means of, our regular notification letters. When somebody is granted in their rating decision notice, they'll get a letter that lets them know other benefits that they're entitled to. There are other various mailings and outreach strategies and campaigns. And of course, our regional offices, when they're doing their local outreach activities, they're also communicating to veterans all of the portfolio of benefits that they're entitled to.
Okay. Mr. Burke, I don't know if Mr. Pamperin wants to take this one, but how many participants currently in VR&E also have entitlement to TDIU, and how many participants that have entitlement to TDIU have successfully completed the VR&E program and obtained and maintained suitable employment in the last 5 years?
I appreciate the question, sir. Within the last 5 years, there have been just a little under 3,000 veterans that are in receipt of TDIU that have applied and gone through our program. Currently, within the last 5 years, almost 70, the number 68 folks have successfully completed the program through a positive outcome. Right now, we have actually 577 currently in a plan of service. And the average time that somebody is in the VR&E program is around 4 years. So as they continue to go through the program, that number will grow.
Okay, my time's up, but those numbers feel incredibly low, and maybe we can talk a little bit offline about why that's the case. And we appreciate your thoughts here today. I yield back.
Mr. McGarvey, you recognize 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll be brief as possible, given that votes have been called. Mr. Burke, related to some of the things that Mr. Pappas was asking about in particular, he was asking about the age, which I appreciate. I want to know how the VA views the eligibility threshold, and should what is considered to be marginal employment be a higher dollar amount?
Yes, sir, thank you. As you're aware, VA doesn't set that threshold. That actually is not established by VA. We are simply using the poverty level established by the Census Bureau, and those are the numbers that we utilize. But again, I think with respect to the IU benefit itself, the thing that I really want to portray is that the importance behind the changes to the VASR-D are really going to help better compensate those specifically with mental disorders compared to what the current does now. And it will alleviate some of the need to utilize individual unemployability, because the evaluations assigned using the potential new VASR-D criteria will reflect such.
And I think, when we're looking at these veterans who have been injured, who have some type of disability, have something going on, if the idea behind TDIU is to compensate a veteran for future lost earnings, how much should the veteran's military occupation or post-service occupation factor into the compensation level, if at all?
Well, I think that we have a lot of factors that we have to consider with respect to granting unemployability. It's the individual's current work history, it's their prior work history. We do a 5-year look back. We look to see, even in our exams, if we require an examination, we're asking the examiners to indicate what level of impairment of their earning capacity is because of their service-connected disabilities. So we are looking at a lot of factors, not just the disability evaluation, but those specific contentions and disabilities and their respective impact on earning capacity.
Thank you. And I say many times in this committee and in the larger committee, when we talk about veterans' benefits, they're not a gift. These benefits have been earned by our servicemen and women. I just want to know how are we helping those who may be making a little too much to qualify for TDIU, but less than they need to make ends meet?
Well, we do have provisions within our process that allow for still the award of unemployability, even if they're making a little above the marginal threshold, the poverty level. So we do have things like extra scheduler consideration. There are review processes. So my point is, if they're $1 over the threshold level, that is not a bar to them receiving the benefit.
Thank you very much. You're back.
Thank you, sir. Vote's been called. Mr. Burke, we only have one round of questioning for you and Mr. Pamper and Mr. Braun, so thank you for joining us today. I expect to reconvene 10 minutes after the last vote back here in this, but gentlemen, thank you very much.
a result of TDIU, which is down from 7.8% 6 years earlier. But despite the downward trend, proposals to limit TDIU, particularly based on a veteran's age, have persisted. For example, VA's fiscal year 2018 budget submission included a proposal to terminate TDIU ratings for veterans at the age of 62 and cut off TDIU benefits for any veteran already in receipt of Social Security benefits. More recently, the December 2022 CBO report, Options for Reducing the Deficit, included a proposal to terminate TDIU ratings for veterans at age 67 and cut off TDIU benefits for any veterans already in receipt of Social Security support. Another option in the CBO report would require that once a veteran meets their full Social Security retirement age, all disability benefits would be reduced by 30%. Mr. Chairman, today, many people work well beyond what was once considered normal retirement age. To award TDIU to a veteran at age 64, but deny it to a veteran at age 67 would be unfair discrimination, desperate treatment, and wholly unjustified from an equitable standpoint. In fact, under current federal regulations, age may not be considered a factor in evaluating service-connected disabilities or in determining entitlement to TDIU. Although TDIU is based on the effect of disability on the individual, it does not and should not discriminate on the basis of age. That is why DAV strongly supports H.R. 6362, the Protecting Benefits for Disabled Veterans Act, which would codify entitlement to TDIU, including the prohibition against considering age as a factor in determining eligibility. It is also important to understand that TDIU is not a retirement benefit, and it should not be considered as comparable to either Social Security retirement or disability insurance. Many veterans in receipt of TDIU who are unable to work due to their disabilities may not have earned enough credits to even qualify for Social Security retirement or might receive very low benefits. As such, proposals to reduce or cut off TDIU when a veteran becomes eligible for Social Security benefits could be devastating for some veterans. Another proposal that has been floated would link the award of TDIU to a completion of a vocational assessment, likely done by the Veterans Readiness and Employment Program, or VRE. While DAV is a steadfast supporter of VRE, in fact, our national service officers, and I was one of them, complete a VRE vocational rehabilitation program during our training. Mr. Chairman, most veterans, including those who have serious injuries, illnesses, and disabilities from their service, want to work. We do not support making a vocational assessment a requirement for TDIU eligibility. We are concerned that it could create an additional burden on veterans as well as a strain on VRE's ability to fulfill its responsibility to those veterans who need their services. Finally, Mr. Chairman, we believe it is time to increase the rates for disability compensation for all veterans, particularly for veterans rated at 100%, including those under TDIU. According to the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, the national average salary is approximately $59,000. The rate for veterans rated 100% disabled is approximately $45,000, almost 25% less. It's time to change that. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my statement, and I would be happy to answer any questions you or members of the committee have.
Thank you very much. The written statement of Mr. Bearfield will be entered into the hearing record. Mr. Figlioli, you're now recognized for 5 minutes to deliver your opening statement.
Acting Chairman Self, Ranking Member Pappas, members of the subcommittee, on behalf of the men and women of the Veterans of Foreign Wars of the United States and its auxiliary, thank you for the opportunity to provide our remarks on this important issue. The TDIU program is essential for veterans who can no longer maintain gainful employment due to service-related injuries. It offers vital support not only to veterans but also to their families, acknowledging the sacrifices made and the lifelong impacts of their service. Discussions around TDIU often focus on financial aspects, but at its core, it is about supporting people whose lives have been irrevocably changed. For countless decades, veterans have returned home with life-altering injuries from toxic exposures, IED blasts, or contact with harmful substances like radiation and dioxins. These injuries, both visible and invisible, can prevent veterans from securing employment. For those who do not meet the schedule requirements for a 100% disability rating, the VA offers TDIU to ensure they receive the support they need. Every system has room for improvement, including the TDIU program. The VFW supports enhancements to sustain or improve benefits for veterans, but we must be cautious of unintended consequences for those who rely on this benefit, especially the most vulnerable, who depend on this payment for their very survival. TDIU has been a contentious topic in VA benefits discussions, partly because it challenges conventional norms by not considering age in eligibility decisions. This exclusion of age often leads to debates about its parity with civilian sector benefits. While some veterans' disabilities worsen with age, VFW believes most veterans would prefer to work if they were able to do so. Critics often focus on the financial cost of TDIU, especially when media attention on war expenses fades. However, cutting veterans' benefits is historically unjust and remains so. Benefits earned through service are never a waste of money. Recent legislative changes like the PACT Act and the expansion of Blue Water Navy benefits have increased the number of veterans eligible for TDIU, many of whom are older and have been silently suffering due to bureaucratic red tape. Comparing TDIU to Social Security is misleading. TDIU beneficiaries have service-connected disabilities preventing them from contributing to Social Security, like their civilian counterparts. Age is not a factor in TDIU eligibility, and VFW supports this policy. The median age of the House of Representatives is nearly 60 and the Senate is 65. And it's off-putting that members of these bodies would suggest other Americans should not be considered part of the workforce, simply due to age. Elder workers are entitled to their earned wages and associated benefits. Veterans receiving TDIU did not have that capability and should not be penalized due to their documented inability to work based on their service-connected disabilities. Advanced health care has increased life expectancy and work for potential veterans, but proposals to cut TDIU at retirement age equated unfairly with Social Security, ignoring the unique nature of service-related disabilities. The VRNE program offers veterans training for new career fields, and those on TDIU can potentially benefit from it. However, consistent and effective implementation of VRNE is lacking. VFW advocates for better identification and support for eligible veterans, including automatic invitations to apply for VRNE in decision letters, allowing veterans to make informed choices about their participation. As the world and technology has evolved over the past several decades, the needs of our veterans have as well. Service members are trained in the art of warfare, whereas veterans need to be trained in civilian fields, many of which, such as coding, aeronautics, robotics, and others, didn't even exist a generation ago. The economic opportunity for better earnings potential is vastly greater for veterans who receive this essential training from VRNE. For 125 years, the VFW has championed the needs of veterans and their families. While some view TDIU as costly, it represents the true cost of war. Veterans sent to dangerous places return changed, and it is our duty to ensure they have the resources to survive and thrive, despite their service-connected disabilities. The collective debt to these veterans is unrepayable, but ensuring their survival is the least we can do. Mr. Chairman, this concludes my testimony, and I am happy to answer questions you may have.
He entered into the hearing record. And now I recognize Mr. Stoddard for your opening statement for 5 minutes.
Acting Chairman Self, Ranking Member Pappas, and distinguished subcommittee members, on behalf of Wounded Warrior Project, I want to thank you for this opportunity to speak about TDIU. We share your commitment to ensuring VA continues to support our veterans who have earned this benefit through their service and their sacrifice. Wounded Warrior Project has been working with post 9/11 generation for 20 years, and our goal is to ensure every veteran receives the benefits they've earned in a manner that honors their service. Across more than a dozen programs and services that we provide at no cost to the veteran, one of the first and most impactful interactions many of our warriors have with our organization is with our benefit services team. Helping warriors with their VA claim is just one element of our holistic approach to helping warriors on their path to mental, physical, and financial wellness. But our research tells us that this is a critical part. Our annual Warrior Survey reveals that service-connected injuries and complex health problems play a major role in sustaining gainful employment. When looking at disability ratings alongside employment status, approximately half of our responding warriors who were unemployed and looking for work had a 100% disability rating. Among responding warriors who were not looking for work, about 7 in 10 had a 100% disability rating. Why are these numbers important? Because a 100% rating is often associated with unemployment and does not adequately insulate a warrior from feeling financial strain. Almost 2/3 of our warriors who reported a 100% disability rating also reported they did not have enough money to make ends meet last year. To be clear, some veterans have conditions where work isn't going to be possible now or in the future. But for others, TDIU is a part of the larger picture that includes getting back to work eventually. Wounded Warrior Project is committed to helping disabled veterans seamlessly transition into the civilian workforce. In many instances, we inform warriors about the opportunities provided by VRNE before pursuing a TDIU rating. Here is an example of how we help. Despite a decorated career, an Army sergeant had a service-related injuries that left him eligible for TDIU. While this financial security was a relief, the Army sergeant yearned to continue contributing. He reached out to both VRNE and Wounded Warrior Project for support on his employment endeavors. VRNE counselors with expertise in veteran disabilities began crafting an employment plan that leveraged the sergeant's transferable skills and accommodated his limitations. Meanwhile, we offered support through benefit services, alumni, our Warriors to Work programs, connecting the sergeant with a network of veterans who understood his unique challenges and could offer guidance on navigating a civilian career path. This combined arms approach with VRNE's practical tools and Wounded Warrior Project's camaraderie positioned the sergeant for successful transition back into gainful employment. For reasons like this, we support the VRNE program as a pathway to long-term employment of disabled warriors. We do have some suggestions for how these systems can work better together. First, we strongly support the removal of the VRNE delimiting date. Under current regulations, a veteran is only eligible for VRNE for 12 years from the date of discharge or their first disability rating. If disabilities worsen or new disabilities arise, some veterans may find the VRNE option is no longer there and TDIU becomes one of the only reasonable options left. Removing the delimiting date would fix this. Second, we support making VRNE easier to access for veterans who have established TDIU. Although pursuing VRNE should never be a prerequisite to receive TDIU, it can be a launch pad to return to work when a veteran is ready. Since the evidence needed to receive TDIU generally exceeds what's needed to enter VRNE, we would support a more integrated on-ramp for a program that can prepare warriors to re-enter the workforce. Third, we recommend that the VA do a review of the overall effectiveness of reducing a veteran on TDIU to their overall original disability rating after securing gainful employment for a period of 12 months. By looking into this issue, we can ensure the appropriate steps to ensure veterans with a TDIU rating have the support they need to be gainfully employed by removing financial barriers that may inhibit them from the earliest steps back into the workforce. Finally, we recommend exploring the development and implementation of a VRNE resource hub. Current VRNE staffing and resources are not consistent across the country, so the same opportunities are not available to all veterans seeking VRNE support. We recommend creating solutions to help all veterans, regardless of where they live and access service, to have equal opportunity to leverage VRNE resources in their pursuit of gainful employment. Thank you for the opportunity to testify and look forward to your questions.
Thank you to each of you for being here and for what you do for our veterans. I appreciate your testimonies. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes, and your written statement, Mr. Stoddard, will be entered in the hearing record. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes. I want to go back to Mr. Bearfield about increasing any mandatory spending amounts. There is one offset that is used by this committee, by this Congress, for mandatory veterans programs that we add to. The offset, and y'all all represent major VSOs, so this question is to you. The only offset, and I say it's not an offset, is that we add to veterans' housing loan fee in the out years. So I need the American people, and I've raised this with the major VSOs before, we pay for new mandatory spending in any veteran program, any new veteran program, on the backs of veterans alone in the future. So it's not an offset, it is an addition to the budget. So, so with that said, I'll move to my first question, and it's for Mr. Stoddard. The PACT Act, I've talked to young veterans who have met the presumptive criteria for the PACT Act, but who have no symptoms. And they have not filed for the PACT Act because they don't have any symptoms. They could 15 years from now. So how does that impact that VRE date that you mentioned?
So I appreciate the question, Mr. Self. I think when we talk about, we want to draw service connection is required to get into the VRE program. So important that if it's not PACT Act related and they have that, the most important thing I would recommend to anybody that's going to pay attention to this is they just need to get in and get filed for a claim so we can get their disability. The most important thing is I don't want them to overthink it. I want them to come see us, let us advocate for them, and find a way to get them connected to those resources that they so richly deserve.
I agree with your suggestion. Mr. Figlioli, how can veterans be better educated about the VA vocational rehabilitation services available to them? What do we need to do? Because we hear a lot in this committee about our veterans simply don't know what's available to them.
Thank you, Mr. Acting Chairman. Really, a good, strong, robust marketing campaign, very similar to the PACT Act. PACT Act was one of the biggest things that's been advertised from VA in a very long time. Right. We've got social media platforms left and right. We have them everywhere. VA definitely uses them, but you also have the opportunity to partner with VSOs, whether it's the major VSOs, minor VSOs. Use those social media platforms as well to advertise the availability of VRE. Reach as many veterans as you can. A lot of times it's somebody that's on the program, they understand what the benefit is, and you really have to rely on word of mouth. We're doing mass mailings. Lots of letters go out from VA. We've had hearings on letters. My inbox is inundated every day with electronic messaging from the comms department from VA. So I think if we all work together and probably leverage social media quite a bit, we could reach more veterans as well.
Mr. Bearfield, would you like to take a whack at that one?
Yes. VA has already started doing campaigning where they talk about health care. They could also do that same campaigning talking about other services that are available to veterans. On my commute in and out of DC, I listen to WTOP radio station, and they have in constant rotation commercials that talk about VA health care, coming back to VA to get your health care. They could use those same media campaigns to talk about other benefits and services that are available to them through VA.
And how about our rural veterans? Because we've got many veterans that live in rural areas, my district included.
In cases of veterans that are in rural areas, then along with the social media campaigns that were mentioned, then that's when you could use mass mailings to veterans in the rural areas to reach out to them, to make sure that they get the same message that veterans that live in metropolitan areas receive.
Thank you. And Mr. Stoddard, back to your proposal for a steady glide path off of TDIU once gainful employment is had. Would you elaborate on that?
Yes, sir, and I appreciate that question. What we're finding is during this off-ramp in the 12-month window for VRE, we have veterans, it goes back to your education and informing what veterans know. Mm-hmm. For a year, they have been gaining the full rate of the TDIU, and they've been getting the gainful employment, which they've been getting. So they've become accustomed to this. So when the VRE becomes at that 12-month mark, and the VA decides to take them back to their original disability rating, and I use the example of 100% to 90% is $1,000 less in a pocket of a veteran. And as much as we want to prepare them for that off-ramping and saying, hey, this is going to happen, we know that the real landscape for veterans are they're going to pay and get accustomed to that money in their pocket. So our thought is we start to off-ramp and think about how we educate them early on into the process and then make sure their employment matches whatever that off-ramp is going to be.
Thank you very much. Now I recognize the ranking member for 5 minutes question.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. As I asked VA earlier, I wanted to ask all of you this, if your organizations or you personally support tying TDIU to age, as CBO has suggested.
Mr. Ranking Member, no, we do not. The law of the land is that age is not tied to a benefit, nor should it be, and we will not support that concept.
Thank you. Mr. Bearfield?
No, we do not support having age tied to this current TDIU benefit.
Okay. And Mr. Stoddard?
Wounded Warrior Project does not support
Okay.
tying age to TDIU.
Well, thank you. And I think that's why this proposal should be a non-starter. And Mr. Stoddard, you were talking about streamlining eligibility for TDIU recipients into VR&E. Given that there's significant overlap in eligibility, this kind of categorical eligibility for TDIU recipients makes sense. But creating a fast lane into VR&E could have some concerning implications, for veterans. Could crowd out other veterans from the program or further overburden an already overworked VR&E workforce. And I'm wondering if Wounded Warriors Project has considered what it would mean for current enrollees in VR&E and their level of service if we see an influx of thousands of new veterans that were added to the rolls on an annual basis.
Ranking Member Pappas, I appreciate that question. I think what our message here is very clear is that the workload actually we think would be because they've already met the requirements of VR&E. Mm-hmm. So the process of having to counsel and do those things really takes that workload off of those counselors that could focus on counselors doing that because they've already met the requirements of VR&E. They don't have to go through the process of trying to figure out, do they belong there? And so we think that'll help. Obviously, there is a concern. We want to make sure that the workload and the amount of people taking care of our veterans is represented appropriately, but we think that this would be a helpful process in getting our folks taken care of.
Okay. Wondering if others on the panel want to reflect on whether veterans on TDIU should be, whether it should be tied to VR&E as a condition of eligibility.
No, Mr. Ranking Member, but it's important to get people onto VR&E. Let's just get them retrained into new careers. If they need to get off the rolls, if they want to get off the rolls, let's give them that opportunity. Mm-hmm. So yes, both programs need to coexist. I think VAW's concern is, that VA has eliminated some FTE in the VRE program, and now we're looking to add more people to it. If we found funding and a lot of staff to add for PACT Act processing and claims processing, should have had the downstream thought about the ancillary benefits of a claim, and they should have had some foresight to say, well, people are going to want to maybe get onto VRE and retrain for a career. So let's see if we can't fill those gaps with these staffing levels.
Thank you. Mr. Bearfield?
Yes, DAV does not support making a vocational assessment a requirement for TDIU. And as mentioned in my oral remarks, when you're talking about putting additional claims into the VR&E system, you're going to put a strain on the current workload that those counselors have. And as it was just mentioned, in the upcoming budget, they want to reduce VR&E staff by 60 people. So you're talking about an influx of claims and a reduction of people. That's naturally going to lead to a backlog, and that's going to be creating a bigger problem. So that's not a successful plan.
Okay, thank you for that. Mr. Figlioli, maybe I could turn to you for this one. If you'd agree that veterans often work in fields that are not directly or only tangentially related to the work that they're doing in the military, and similarly, veterans like civilians often change careers several times in their adult life, correct?
Yes, sir. The workforce from post-World War II, Korea and Vietnam is different than what it is today. Today, it's far more technically based. More people are apt to have some kind of a tech interest, coding, web design. Technology is involved in everything that we do, whether we're broadcasting this hearing or preparing for the hearing. We rely on data, research. Everything is tech-linked. I don't think that the average veteran today is more or less likely to pick a blue-collar job, but we also need to be prepared to support them as well. and be prepared for the change. So if people look for a new career, the benefits available to them, and they can get into a career field that doesn't exacerbate their disabilities, but they have options. Do they want to have a blue-collar job? Do they want to have a white-collar job and still receive that benefit?
Yep. It would seem like it would be difficult to predict someone's future earnings potential based just on their MOS, even if it directly translates into a civilian profession. It seems like that's what you're saying, correct?
Yes, sir. The earnings potential today is far greater than it was at any other time. So, let them earn what they can, as much as they can, and let's find them a job that they can have that maximum earnings potential, but sustain the benefit.
So given that, does anyone think that VA compensation, TDIU or otherwise, should be based on MOS or civilian occupation? Mr. Stoddard?
Ranking Member Pappas, absolutely not. And I think the example I would use is if you took that where I got out of the Army 10 years ago, my earning potential and where I'm at now may be drastically different. So Wounded Warrior Project would not be in support of that.
EFW either, sir. I think that's where you stand.
Thank you. Mr. Bearfield?
We do not agree with that.
Okay. Well, thanks for your responses. Sorry, Mr. Chair, for going over, but I yield back.
I want to thank all of our witnesses for testifying before us today on this important issue of ensuring that TDIU benefit works for today's veterans who sacrifice for our nation and are unable to work as a result. And with that, I recognize Mr. Pappas for any closing remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To answer the question posed at the top of this hearing, does a total disability rating based on individual unemployability properly compensate today's veterans? And the answer is unequivocally no. But how could it possibly? How could a monetary benefit, no matter the scale, adequately compensate someone whose life has been altered so significantly by their service to this country that they've been rendered unable to work? We simply can't. The best we can do is to try to get as close as we can. And the TDIU program at VA helps in that effort by individualizing what can be an often rigid system. So I appreciate the subcommittee having this hearing to help highlight a sometimes obscure program and to shed some light on ways that VA may help veterans who are unable to work or are willing to re-enter the workforce but need some assistance in doing so. Lost in this conversation, though, is whether or not the compensation rates for 100% service-connected veterans, scheduler or TDIU, are themselves high enough. I would argue that they are not, and this Congress should look at raising them beyond the annual COLA, but that's a discussion for another time. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I join you in thanking all of the witnesses before the panel today, and I yield back.
Thank you, Ranking Member Pappas, and thank you all again for your participation in today's hearing. I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material. I plan to put for the record a question to you officially. Without objection, so ordered. This hearing is adjourned. Thank you.